using local suppliers, make a very clear concept about the menu, that you're only using things that you can buy which grows no further than 150 kilometers away from a resort. You know, you have to look at be more rational about it, which means that we are serving berries and fruits that grow locally. We have a beautiful apples and etc. So that makes a world of a difference how you're approaching the hospitality aspect.
Hello and welcome to the Regenerative Design Podcast. I'm your host, Mathieu Mehuis, and each episode I interview leading authorities in regenerative practices, people who excel at doing well and doing good. So are you passionate about protecting our planet for future generations while thriving in business? Well, you're in the right place, because this podcast is dedicated to making our world better and your business more successful. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Regenerative Design Podcast. Today we have yet another amazing guest. His name is Sam-Erik Ruttman, and Sam-Erik has a wealth of experience in the hospitality industry, an industry that is also dear to me as I have been traveling quite a lot, and I'm a big fan of eco resorts and projects that can be a lighthouse project for other aspects that are happening in the development industry. So it's amazing to have Sam-Erik here. So Sam-Erik actually studied in Las Vegas in the 70s in the hospitality industry. And he is currently working in a landscape, in an architecture firm that is called Studio Puisto. And he is there a specialist and director of global hospitality development. So it's amazing to talk to you, Sam-Erik. Welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm fine, and thank you very much for inviting me. I feel very privileged to be here with you. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you here. I was on your podcast, so it was really nice to talk about certain topics. And now I'd love to hear your perspective today on the hospitality industry. So before we really dive deep into that, I would love to hear your backstory. Like, where did everything start? I saw that you studied in the 70s. Like, was it already in your early age very clear that you were going to be working in the hospitality business?
Well, I have to be very honest, and it's only between you and me and no one else, that it was a point in my life when I was very young. I didn't really know what I want to do with myself. The thing is that, of course, I had some ideas. I loved photography. I loved music. I played guitar, and I was very active photographer. I was very active guitarist, and I did some performances. In fact, I was part of a group that published one record, or that was called a long play record. And of course, the sales were good enough that I could give one copy to my mother and father and my aunt and my uncle and so on. But the sales were not fantastic. But it was a thing in part of my life where I felt I was very creative, and nothing could stop me from doing what I would love to do. And I remember specifically when we were recording this album, it was and I'm a great fan of the music that the Beatles produced in the 60s. I mean, they still are so relevant, their music. And I remember that they used always kind of sound tracks like they used for certain songs, started off when then a jet plane takes off. So that sound, right, means that you were traveling to somewhere. So I used that in one of our songs also. I mean, I had a chance to kind of copy, and the sound engineers thought I was crazy, but they followed me. So I was very proud that I was able to do those things. But about getting into hospitality, my parents were not from the hospitality background. They were more into health and wellness at that time, and they were ahead of their time in terms of providing wellness services. And that was not. Well, I was not so interested in that. I had just a naive way of thinking about seeing the world and meeting new people, and the world was just open for me. But I was very fortunate that my parents also took me to places where I had a chance to stay, whether it was a hotel or go to a restaurant. And at early age, I really was fascinated about the atmosphere of a fine restaurant, where you have crisp white tablecloth. The staff was in a very sharp white uniforms, and then you had crystal chandeliers and the live candles where you have crystal glasses, and everything was very shiny. So those were kind of my early memories from when I was 5 years old about what I thought that later on that hospitality be like. So I was always looking for that thing. But reading books, I was reading quite a bit of books when I was a kid, particular books about traveling and going to places that I always been dreaming of going, whether it would be a Pacific Islands or to a faraway places. And somehow all those ideas, again, stayed in my mind, even work-wise. I put behind my photography became a passionate hobby, which it still is. And then the music became a sort of well, you cannot see the guitar, but I think it's on here side. There's a box in the back. That's where my guitar is still. I take it out once in a while to keep up my practice with this. But I started my first position. In fact, I asked my mother, where should I go to work? And she said, well, I think you love the atmosphere of hotels. Let's give it a try to go to work for a hotel. So I did. So I was very fortunate to join a hotel outside Helsinki, which was a manor house. And that's what we would be calling nowadays a boutique hotel. And so I became sort of what they called portier, but the actual meaning of portier in that hotel means that there's a person who is 24 hours on a shift from 9 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock the next morning. So basically he receives guests, he will carry the baggage up to the room, he will park the car, he will take new reservations, and when the guest is leaving, he will then take care of the cashiering side. So I did a lot of those things, plus providing a little bit local tour guiding. It's about when people wanted to see Helsinki. After my work shift, I jumped into their car and we went to Helsinki, and I showed them around the city. So that was my life for a few years, but that was not really what I was dreaming about. I was dreaming about going internationally and I practiced to speak English. So I was dreaming of working in the United States, for instance, or in Australia or in England, where English was the first language. So I eventually then had a chance to get a scholarship to study in United States. But before that, I was a trainee in a resort, which was owned by a lifestyle magazine publisher. Now, it might maybe sound a little bit crazy to you when I tell you the name of that resort, but the resort was called Playboy Resort. Now, the Playboy Resort was basically a lifestyle of the rich and famous, the kind of the jet setter. They had this hotel in Wisconsin, not in Chicago, where the Playboy magazine was from, but it was in Lake Geneva, where the resort was built. So it was a very large resort with a private airport, so people could fly in with their private jets. It had everything you can imagine, 2 golf courses designed by very famous golf professionals of those days, and tennis and everything you can imagine.
So you had your first job in Helsinki, where you were born, and then before you even studied, you figured out to get a job overseas in the US. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what it was. Yes. Yeah. Because I felt that in order to be successful internationally, I need to work internationally first. Mm-hmm. Because the Finnish style of working in hospitality was one thing, but I felt that it wasn't enough that I could be successful. And nothing wrong with the Finnish hospitality, but international hospitality is still one step ahead in many ways in how things were being done. So that's why I really want to have a chance to travel.
And this was in the 60s, 70s when America was obviously booming. So
yeah, this was I left Finland in 1976.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so then that basically by the time I finished with this Playboy Resorts, I moved to Las Vegas and packed my bags to study there, and that was in 78, 79, and from then on, and the reason why Las Vegas, because I felt that I want to be where the most successful destination of that time in the United States, where the most creative hotel concepts, entertainment, everything around hospitality in the United States was the place to be. So I had a chance to work in some of these large resorts to see how life worked, and many of our visiting lecturers for at the school were coming from the industry, which I felt was very important. And there's nothing wrong with some of the other hotel schools, which are very well known in the United States. But the exception was that you could learn something from the top professionals in their field who were working in Las Vegas. And that was actually a huge eye opener for me. And my move then from Las Vegas to joining an international hotel company was that there were the recruiters from the hotel companies came to the different hotel school campuses interviewing. So I studied very, very hard about the company culture, what they stood for, what was the mission of the hotel company, that I was in the mindset when I was being interviewed for a management trainee position, that I could just be in the same page with those people. And it worked for me. So I got several offers, and I wanted to make a move in my direction of a career, no, not to stay in the United States, but to go then international. And that's how I joined Hyatt Corporation, or at that time it was called Hyatt International. That was all the Hyatts outside the United States. And that then took me to different parts of the world.
Wow, that's incredible. So from that early age experience, you had a sort of vision, you put the mindset in, and then all of a sudden you were in the management in Hyatt International. So then did it go from the Hyatt, that experience, did you get already a flavor of like what it's the experience of having something else than just a hotel, like how you enter maybe some gardens, some experiences outside, or was that still early stage?
Well, particularly in the United States, with Hyatt, I was working in the urban environment. But once I was transferred, my posting after the United States was in Kuwait. Okay, that's a desert, so you don't have much of a landscaping there. But there was other things that I learned from that experience. But when I moved to Asia, to Indonesia, and to Thailand, then I could see that. And maybe the most inspiring locations where I worked was in Bali, where we had, and there was the Bali Hyatt in Sanur Beach, which was a landscape architect. I think he's original from New Zealand, and he took a Balinese name, Made Vijaya. That's his name. And Made Vijaya was the landscape architect for the Bali Hyatt of that time. And that I saw as the inspiration, what I thought there could be, what a garden that fits into a tropical resort should look like. That was my inspiration. And but particularly I paid attention to when I think back again, it was a lot of light. It was light in the garden because it gets pitch black after the sunset. All the lighting was indirect. Either they were hidden in pottery, in pots and so on, but you always see some hints of where things are. But I think it was a very beautiful way how he was able to incorporate the vision of what people would expect to see when they are in a tropical paradise like in Bali. So that was really, and that's where I don't remember much. The hotel itself was nice. It's nothing wrong with that. But I think the particular landscape was what always people talked about, how stunning it was.
That's incredible. And do you remember what year that was?
Well, I was because I was in after Kuwait. I was I was in Bali. I mean, in Jakarta, with the Hyatt Ariaduta at that time with Hyatt. So we are talking about in the early 80s. And then my actual position and I stayed in Bali because of coming from work-wise, but my actual position in Bali was then in the early 90s, where I was the project manager for a new Hyatt called in Nusa Dua. And of course, we were now planning a new huge resort of over 500 rooms at that time. But the inspiration, what was for the resort was, there was always that landscape aspect that was looked at for Bali Hyatt, which unfortunately could have been done better if you think about what was done for in the Nusa Dua area, where they took the bulldozer and cleared the whole land, and they had to replant everything and put topsoil, and it did not. It took many years for it to grow. I mean, things grows relatively quickly, but those people who came for the first 5 years, they really didn't get the feeling of being in a tropical paradise. So there's a lesson to be learned about clearing a site and or rather than doing things the way we are doing it these days.
Yeah, I think Bali in and of itself, the whole island is an incredible case study. I spent some time there myself, did some volunteering in a beautiful eco resort in Blue Lagoon, it was called, or it's still called today. And there they when they were building the resort, they really checked every tree. How can we design the houses around it? Okay, and if we have to remove a tree, how can we plant 10 new trees? So that was a great experience. And yeah, I think Bali is a great case study in ways of okay, how can eco resorts look like? But unfortunately also how things should not be done, especially I would say in the last 15 to 10 years, probably even the last 5 years more, that it became so overpopulated. They are struggling with waste management. Also food production is becoming a difficulty there. So what is your take on how the hospitality industry can have an influence on local environments, communities? How do you see that the role for a hospitality industry?
Well, when I look back on how my career was initially, where I was thinking, what is the definition of hospitality? At that, in the beginning of my career here, and I will then lead you to what I think it is now. In the beginning, I thought always the customer is king. That was sort of a cliche that we used. That meant that whatever the customer said, it was fine, and nothing could go. Whatever they said was basically what we have to provide. Mm-hmm. And then it also meant at the time that the resorts were gate communities, where the community didn't come in except for those people who were working there from the community. And of course, this separation of community and then the hotel was created frictions because the locals felt that they were being ripped off in the process. But my definition of hospitality has changed. And today my definition of hospitality is community. And you have to embrace the community from day one, and also to make sure that they can earn a living there, because in one way they will try to earn a living. And if they earn a living that they're working together with the resort or the hotel, it is better. It's a win-win for everyone. And it means that using local suppliers, and make a very clear concept about the menu, that you're only using things that you can buy, which grows no further than 150 kilometers away from the resort. So forget about buying navel oranges from Spain if you are in a distant location. Forget the banana idea. You have to look at be more rational about it. And then, because now we're not looking at that customer is king, that say, well, I want my bananas, I want my fresh squeezed orange juice. You have to be able to brave. Well, thank you. It is I appreciate what you want, but we only provide things that we can get from 150 kilometers away, which means that we are serving berries and fruits that grow locally. We have a beautiful apples and etc. So that makes a world of a difference how you're approaching the hospitality aspect, and that's where the community. And then the critical factor is that when you are hiring people, you always look for your talent from the local community. There are cases, of course, that there are people who have never worked in the hospitality industry. So you have to also bring people from further away. But the majority of those people that work in the hotel will have to be from the local community, because they can also be the host and the ambassadors of that community for the guest.
Yeah, I think that's an incredible concept that it's obviously now becoming more and more of like a mainstream theme. But I think from your early experience in Bali and in other countries, you've started to see that there's a bigger potential of how people experience a holiday, that they can even learn something about local food production, about culture, about community. And that, I think, is something that sets a hotel apart from most of the other hotels in the whole experience. Because end of the day, I think what people are wanting the most is a certain experience, not so much obviously, okay, you want some luxury, you want, depending on your budget, you want to have like the most amazing experience, but it also comes down like what's happening around it, what is happening around the hotel. So yeah, I'd love to hear more about your take on what do you see that the future of hospitality will look like. Is it already happening now? Do you still see big changes happening in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, it's evolving. It's continuously evolving. Part of it is the solo travel is growing. People in different stages in their life, they're traveling. There is what we call the U generation, not the young or old generation, but the U generation, where you are going to places where you want to go, and you want to look at the particular in your lifestyle. What can you learn something, or you can experience new things, and you will seek places to go which can provide you with those experiences. Some people like to call it experiential traveler. Perfect example is that you are traveling to Nepal, and you want to contribute to the community that don't have electricity. So you put you buy solar panels, put them on your back, and then you hike up to the village and have those solar panels installed. So then there's electricity being provided for the children, so they can so they can read in the nighttime. A friend of mine, in fact, has done that. I mean, I think that's an example of kind of a travel experience where you give something to the community, you learn something yourself in the same time, and that creates sort of the satisfaction for yourself that you are accomplishing. And people frequently ask me, what is the meaning of life? That's always a big question. And my definition is that meaning of life for me is to be meaningful to others. Now, when you think about that, what it could mean, everybody has their own way of thinking how they can be meaningful. So my friend here, who I mentioned, she thought about that providing solar panels to that village, to the school, so the children can read and they can grow and become successful. To me, was a fantastic example how we all should think about what the meaning of life is.
Yeah, that's an incredible way of looking at it. That, okay, now I think in the Western world where there's a lot of wealth, like we have everything, we kind of experience everything. There's already, people have gone to the best hotels already, and there's more to explore in that way. But why can we not give something back while we're doing that?
Yeah, and then when you ask me the future hospitality, a lot of things are now. There's some of the luxury chains like Four Seasons. They have a fleet of airplanes. So they have the flying hotel. Basically, they can take you anywhere in the world and basically provide an experience. And then you have, I think it's one of the campers. I think originally maybe United States was popular, and also in Europe, where people are traveling and driving their own, have their hotel room, and they're driving that truck or whatever to a different destination, and they stay every night in a new place, and they wake up in a new place, and they have had a good night's sleep, and they get all the facilities for themselves, so they can enjoy a different kind of experience. And then you have train travel. We have the Orient Express chain. They have their trains, which are like the original Orient Express. So they have different. Or you have the luxury cruisers that have the floating hotel where you wake up every morning in a new harbor. So it's you're not traveling your room. You stay in your room and you're taken to the new destination. So there's so many ways. Or underwater. There's that underwater experience, which I didn't travel, I didn't go there, but there is already in Dubai. They have these underwater hotels. So there are so many things, but those are not so close to my heart. My close to my heart are projects and hotel where we are building, we are creating in a destination which is in part of the wilderness, and that those became quite popular during the COVID period, Corona or COVID period, if you want to call it, where people want to travel to places where they felt safe and they having fresh air. So you start to see that people are prepared to travel quite a far away to get to a place which they are in the nature. They are actually, that's where the glamping became the big thing, and it has been a big thing for quite some time. But essentially, the glamping has been developed from a camping with a simple tent to a glamorous camping, which you could see in Africa in the safari, those tents, and they changed shape. So it's not only the tent can be a cabin which is in the treetops, so there can be so many things. But all this is changing the way we are viewing where the hospitality, and it's all about the imagination. What we our limitation of these things is our imagination.
This podcast is brought to you by the Garden of Your Dreams Masterclass. Are you struggling with finding the right tools and tricks for your garden? Are you lacking the confidence to cultivate the garden you have always wanted? Do you have a backyard with lots of potential, but you get overwhelmed by the lack of knowledge and time to do gardening? Then the Garden of Your Dreams Masterclass is for you. Yeah, I think that's very exciting, and thank you for sharing that the projects I think COVID had a lot of downside, but I would say one of the upsides is that people were hungry for a deeper connection to nature, for going to a place where they can experience something. So I think that's also how you got into your more recent work with Studio Puisto architects in Helsinki, who are specialized in building resorts, eco-resorts, hotel chains. So yeah, let's talk a bit more about that. I find it interesting that you had all this amazing experience in the hospitality business, and now you're kind of going in and helping architects before everything is like operational to like already design or help in the design process, I think. So yeah, tell me more about how all this unfolded.
When I came back to Helsinki with my wife a little bit over 10 years ago, and I left my corporate career with Langham Hospitality Group, I was kind of wondering what would be my next step. Typically, you are thinking about providing consultancy, but I realized very, very quickly that to provide international consultancy, and particularly with my international background for Finland, there was a mismatch. And mismatch was there because my thoughts were that this would be welcomed. But actually, they were more interested what is my local experience. So it didn't matter what my international experience was, because I still, for being away for over 30 years from Finland, I looked at Finland from outside in. And I thought that experience that I had from looking outside in would be of interest and benefit to many hotel developers and hotel owners. And but I was wrong. It wasn't. That was not meant to be.
It's from inside out. So you explored the whole world to try and learn more, and which you obviously did. But then, as it turns out, and I'm also a big fan of the Nordic design, the Nordic minimalism. That is probably why you were directed more in that.
Well, what happened was that I was part of a project with a developer, and who asked me to conceptualize a resort for international travelers. On that project team was 2 architects, and they were the founders of Studio Puisto Architects. And we had a very interesting discussion, and we realized we had a lot of things in common. And it was really refreshing for me to listen to them, how they saw hospitality, what was important to them about they were worried about the future of the environment. They were worried about using unsustainable material of designing spaces or building spaces. They were very worried about all those things. And I was sharing this similar feeling about this. And so the more we discussed, we realized we had a lot of things in common, and also that they felt that I could complement what their mission and their direction they want to take their architectural firm. Because normally an architectural firm, they design spaces and office buildings, etc. But this architectural firm wanted to design hotels, particularly hotels that are sustainable. They can be regenerative, or after it has reached the end of its life, it can be disassembled and the material can be used for something else. And so that was kind of for me a very interesting opportunity to work with them. What they didn't have was international experience, except for some inquiries which did not materialize to a project all the time. But where I came in was my contacts internationally, where I could open up the doors and also have a discussion when the developer wanted to bring a international hotel brand. So with the network I had developed over the years, over 30 years, you get to know quite a few people. So it was also easy to call somebody I knew and to have that discussion, and hopefully then, as a team with the Studio Puisto architects, we could then introduce the concept and the architectural services, and also the operator for a particular project. So that's how it all started. My input in sense is that also that since I worked in hotels, I understand the back of the house and the logistics of how things would to make a hotel functional. So when we are in the stages of getting into the detailed design, not only the conceptual design, that's where I provide the input, how to make the hotel functional. And of course, things have changed over the years. We don't have luxury a lot of hotel staff. So you need to be making it efficient, but still also have the guest in mind all the time. And then creating a arrival experience and a customer journey from the moment they arrive until they leave.
Yeah, I think that experience that you gathered over the years, and then your personal idea also that, okay, what is the meaning of life you want to give back to people, that it all kind of fell beautifully into how you got to work with the architects in Helsinki, or how you are today in the forefront of sustainable and ecological hotelier experiences. So what do you think are the biggest challenges that the hotel industry, maybe even specifically let's call it the regenerative hotel industry, is facing today, and how do you think that can be overcome?
That's a very good question. The challenges are that hotel development, which are led by investors with a short-term vision, are bound to fail because they're only looking at the short payback, and they're looking to resell the hotel. And when it comes to the things that provide sort of that long-term, what we need is people with long-term vision. That because these are and there are certain costs that you have to be able to understand that when you're designing hotels, you will have maybe 18 to 20 different consultants and developers who's understanding that to create the great product and with the top professionals, there's a cost involved. When you have a cost involved and you do a great product, you can charge the rates. And you know, hospitality and hotel business is cyclical. So if there is a upside, you can charge a lot of money for that experience, and people are willing to pay whatever it takes. You have from one day to another, you have a crisis where there is a war in the neighboring country. People are afraid to travel there, or if there is a bird flu, or you have COVID, or whatever those viruses are, and that will stop people from traveling. So it is very sensitive to that. And when you have a investor and hotel developer with a long-term vision, they have to be able to take that risk in consideration. Of course, there's a profit incentive always involved, but the thing is that the success of those hotels who are still alive is because people have a long-term vision and who think along the lines that we are not here to operate the hotel for 5 years, but we are looking at maybe for 20 years, and then to bring it to that level. And that's what the most successful hotels are not born yesterday. They have been around for a while because that long-term vision, and they're adapting to the change of times.
Yeah, I think the adaptability is something very important that can probably be included in the architecture itself, but also in the surrounding. Is that something that the studio is considering in the whole design process? Like maybe going from what is the worst case scenario, what is the somewhat decent scenario, to then obviously aim for the best case scenario, to take that in consideration?
Well, we look at first of thing, should we put the building in this plot first of all? We start with that, and that's not a very
That's a good question.
But we want to think about those things first of all. That what should be built there, or should there be built anything? And when we've gone through the thinking, is that of course we think that we should put something there, but we are, and particularly we are well known for designing resorts which are in difficult locations, where deep on a hill and so on. So that's where we're always looking at that. What is the water flow? What is the climate, the microclimate? We're looking at the forestry because we want to save as many trees in that environment, so we don't have to add things extra to. We want to keep it as natural as possible. So we always think about those things. And so we have that discussion, and we listen to the developer very closely. Where is their customer coming from? Now, they don't always have the idea. They maybe have the idea of what they wish the customer come from. But we also will. That's where I will help with getting data for the feasibility studies to see what is the ideal customer coming from and what the needs are. So we're taking that always in consideration when we are planning a new project, and we want to bring something in. The reason people or developers or hotel owners will choose Studio Puisto is that we have a long-term vision, and we think from the sustainable point of view and the regenerative point of view when we are designing. So the like-minded developers will find it easy to partner with us. If somebody has no, I just want to have a concrete block with a maximum number of rooms of 15 square meters to maximize the usage, we're not really for them, because there are many architects who can do a better job than us to squeezing in as much efficiency into the space than we can. And obviously we could do that technically, but it's not what we are known for. But also we need to add in things like the landscaping. People have a different idea what the landscape should look like. I think that the landscape serves a very important purpose in the total experience. I always remember my favorite hotels where I've stayed at has been a surprise element when you're arriving and driving to the hotel, and you are surrounded either by sand dunes or you have a bamboo forest, and then there's a surprise effect where you're arriving to the hotel, and part of it has been the landscape architect has had this finger in that very cleverly, so it looks very new, it looks very natural and so on, but they're enhancing that environment. So that I think is so important, that to provide a complete feel. So it looks very complete when you have included the landscape into that, and people have different ideas what they think the landscape should be. My personal, I like meadows. I have this kind of. I like meadows because I think it looks very natural and it looks the way it should be. Some other people think that should be just very manicured and so on, but I think that's a different taste.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think it's part of this whole experience, because then it also really reflects, okay, if you want to be in a hotel experience that shows the world, like, okay, how can you make a holiday experience, something where you can learn about nature, where you can connect with the local communities, that inevitably you have to like do something positive for the landscape, at least minimize the impact in the best case scenario. And I think with your experience, what you're aiming for, it should even improve the landscape, so that when people come to the hotel, it feels like they arrive at a new world. I like this experience that you said, like it's like a orchestra when you come to a hotel. You told it to me some other time, that there's the grand momentum to go to the entrance of a hotel, and I think many hotels have done a great job at that, some not so much, and the landscape is obviously part of it. And one aspect that I really love about this is that you can design a space in a certain way that the landscape architect is not even visible. Or I've come across a book that is called Architecture Without Architects. And that is something that I always try to incorporate in my work, as long as there's a demand for it, of course, to create something that seems very natural, but then each and every tree and plant is selected in a certain way to enhance a certain view. And I think that's a great opportunity, because then in my philosophy, we as humans are also part of nature. So why not enhance it and create some beautiful experience? So it's really nice to hear that you and the architecture firm are in that same vision. So
Yeah.
I think I'd love to talk a little bit more about the think tank that you're now also part of, which is a think tank that is really specialized in sustainability of the hospitality industry. Like, how did this organization, how did it got birthed? Why was it founded? And what are the main discussion points in that space? If you want to share more about that.
Yeah, so the hospitality think tank was founded essentially from an idea that Celine Vadam, who's a close friend of mine, had. She's a wellness expert, and we had. She was actually on as a guest on a podcast I was hosting a few years ago, and we got to talk about things, and she has a great network of having worked with international luxury hotel companies, and she thought that she wanted to bring some of her friends together, and then we would be discussing some of the burning issues relating to what's happening in the hospitality and where it's heading and where it could be heading. So we had initially some ideas that to produce maybe some white papers about some particular topics, or we had ideas that let's have like a coffee talk where we discuss around some particular topic, and those coffee talks are actually going on still, which is hosted by Celine, which goes to different topic. One of the things that I was very keen on was is the how you look at the profitability of a hotel. Traditionally, you have basically the financial profitability. But I was looking at there's someone who wrote a book about the triple bottom line. So you have a triple bottom line. One is the profitability of finance, then your profitability of the people, and then you have the community. Mm-hmm. So you have to create those measures and key KPIs for key performance indicators, what has to do with the people, meaning your own staff, the wellness, the mental being, how well that they've been taken care of. So if you have a place where it has a very high turnover, meaning people are leaving, and you realize that that cost of bringing a new staff is getting higher and higher, you're not doing very well. So you're measuring that. Traditionally, you're not always measuring those things in hotel. Of course, staff turnover is measurable, but what are the positive aspects you can do in order to provide a better environment, safety, wellness, and health for the staff, that they stay longer, and then they can also learn why are they coming. They're coming just to clean rooms, so they're coming to advance their career with learning new things. So that's what I talk about. And then we have, of course, the sustainable aspects, which has to do also with the community you have. And so that's even a separate issue. So we talked about those, the triple bottom line philosophy. Majority of hotels don't do that, but we felt that is a worthwhile topic to raise up. And so we tend to talk about those topics. And anything that has to do with wellness and wellness aspect is very important on our thing. In our think tank, we have people who are expert on these wellness aspects. So we try to bring different ideas along the line, or it's the future of hospitality, meaning in terms of food and beverage and restaurants, what it is and what it could be. That means you're taking advantage of your own gardens, and you're starting to grow your own herbs, and that you're providing that kind of a facility. And so you show to your hotel guests that you are actually creating something from your own garden. So it's basically not almost like a farm to table idea that you do in a hotel in a smaller scale, because it will be appreciated from the guests, because they will see that you are taking care of the quality of the experience that the guest is coming, so the meal. And so those are things we talk about. So we are touching on a lot of issues. So we're having a very specific topic every time, and we have about 40 members, depending on the topic, and they're working in hospitality internationally in different hotel companies. So we bring together, and we have an overall discussion about these things. And so that's it's kind of like a conversation platform.
Yeah, I think this is super important to look into the future of the hospitality industry. Probably pretty much any industry should look at it. I think there has been waves of trends of like people talking about people, profit, and planet, like the 3 Ps. And sometimes it's more like an idea, and end of the day, there's not much execution done. But I think in the world that we are living today, where health is not so evident anymore, the climate is going kind of crazy, and more specifically, the hotel industry has had a tough time through COVID, I would say, with like more Airbnb experiences. So I think for the hospitality industry, it's essential to consider all these aspects. So I really love that you kind of showed throughout this episode what the biggest challenges are of the hotel industry, and how you are actually using them to your advantage to create something that will completely stand out from the crowd. I even believe that if hotel industries or hotel chains or new projects and maybe probably existing projects as well, if they don't consider these aspects, that they will go out of business because the customer is really expecting that. So yeah, it's really nice to hear that people like you, Sam-Erik, are in the forefront of changing that experiences and pretty much creating regenerative hotel experiences.
Yeah, and also in one aspect which we didn't discuss yet, but I want to just shortly mention is that how the hotels are marketing themselves in the different platforms. And I have this crazy idea. I don't know what you think about it, but I have to mention it as I think about those things. I say that my idea is that every resort should have their own little radio station, meaning that they can talk about what's happening today in this resort. So it's like your local radio station that maybe plays the favorite musics of the area, or they talk about these things. So you have your radio DJ, if you will, or you have and basically it's infotainment. So basically you're talking about what's going on in the area. You can have the chef coming and talk about things, or you have the local fisherman coming to tell about the season over there, or you have your yoga teacher coming giving the morning yoga during the morning session. And I think there's so few hotels that are catching up on this, because it doesn't cost. It costs a little bit of idea. It costs not so much money. It costs more time, and you have to be organized. And that actually stimulated me to start doing podcasting when I first went live, maybe in 2016. And I had this idea all around that eventually I hope to convince some hotel resort that they should not only rely on third-party advertising. Yes, guests are important to tell their friends is it a good place, but also you should use your by having your own little radio station in this form, because it only needs a laptop, a camera, and a microphone, and the willingness to think hard what you want to talk about, and be disciplined to go live at 7 a.m. to play some morning music, if you will. And you don't have to do it for the full day. You can be there for an hour. I mean, that alone is a great way to build a community. And basically, it's a community building exercise.
I love the idea. It's and it kind of also brings us back to the start of this episode, where you mentioned that you were always from a young age in the music industry. So I think there's some great opportunity for you to mix that up with the hotel experience, and I think it's a very authentic way of showing also, well, obviously the guest, like, okay, what's happening today. It can give you a very fast update. It doesn't even have to be that long, like you said. But then you can also put that on the social media, on the website. So people that are considering to come to your hotel can be like, wow, okay, look, they're connecting with the local fishermen. Tomorrow there's a gardening workshop. Like this, I think, has a huge potential, as we're definitely in a digital world where people want to get a taste of what they're going to experience beforehand. Is there anything that you want to add to that idea?
Well, any of you who are listening to this episode of this great podcast, if you're interested to discuss about this idea, and maybe you're afraid about how should they go about it, contact me. You can reach me through LinkedIn on my name, Sam-Erik Ruttman. You can find me there, and just send me a message. I'll be happy to jump on a call to give some basic ideas. And if you really want to take it to the next step, I can work with you to get you started. So as I said, it's not a huge investment. The investment is in time and effort rather than the hardware. So you can start with a less than 500 euro investment, or even less than that, to get started. And this is how you can have a differentiation to all your competitors who are just very happy that they're on Facebook once in a while, or Instagram, and plus you can distribute all these information that you are broadcasting on the same channels, except that you're doing something different that nobody else is doing.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. I think it's a great way to wrap up this call. So all the links that you mentioned, we will put them in the show notes. Is there other ways that people can follow you, follow more about your work? Maybe also mention your own podcast, as it's a great show that I have been the honor of being on your show as well. So yeah, let everybody know how they can get the whole picture.
Yeah. So my video podcast can be either viewed on YouTube under Sam-Erik Ruttman / The Social Hotelier, or then as a podcast or as an audio version. All you have to do is go to your favorite podcast platform where you're listening to your podcast and look for The Social Hotelier. You see my face there with a microphone, so you can't miss me. And there's always something coming out weekly. And particularly if you're a hotelier or you're in the hospitality industry, this is an area where you will. This is a podcast channel where people are listening to thought leaders and experts, and it's an interview show. So basically, having conversation with experts. Like I recently had a great landscape architect on my show, and so Matthew was there, and we had a great discussion. So come and visit me there, and then of course LinkedIn, as I mentioned, you find me there, and those are basically the main channels. I also have an Instagram channel, Instagram account, and The Social Hotelier, the same name, and then so I think that's the best way to reach me. And then Studio Puisto, I should not forget. I work closely with the Studio Puisto architects, so we have worthwhile to check out the website of studiopuistoarchitects.fi and see the kind of work we do.
Nice, incredible. On that note, I would love to end, and thank you very much, Sam-Erik, for being on the show. You have added a wealth of knowledge on the hotelier business, so thank you again.
My pleasure. It was great to connect with you again, Matthew, and I truly enjoyed our discussion.